Now that you learned the basics about sending requests, in our example here with the help of Axios, and using that data, let's move on and let's now also see how we can make sure that we can click on one of these posts and then load the post data there. So fetch the data for the selected post when we selected it. For this, of course, we need to make sure that we can click our single posts here. So in the post component, I'll first of all add a click listener to the whole article element. And there I expect to get a property which holds a reference to the method which should be executed upon a click. So here I'll name the prop clicked. In the block container, I now need to pass that clicked prop to the post, and I'll just split this over multiple lines to make it a bit easier to read. And clicked here, as I just said, should hold that method reference which should get executed on a click. So since we have a class-based container here, let's add such a method, the post clicked or maybe post selected handler. And there I expect to get an argument, the ID of the post which was selected. Now, down there where we render that list of posts, I can pass an ES6 function, arrow function, as a reference which should be executed when we click on a post. And there I want to execute the post selected handler, but now I can pass post ID as an argument to that method. So now I got an ID to work with. Now that ID should be passed to the full post component. So we should probably store it in the state on maybe a selected post property, like this state selected post ID, so that inside full post, we can listen to us getting a new ID and then fetch data for that ID. So now we need to create that selected post ID property in the state of the block container. And then in the post selected handler, we can call this set state and set the selected post ID to the ID we received as an argument here. So now we're passing that ID to the full post component. And maybe you should also define selected post ID to be an initial null maybe here on the state. So now we added that code. Now we have to go to the full post component and do something with the ID here. Now there, first of all, we can use the ID to output either please select a post or the selected post, depending on whether we have an ID or not. So let's say the default should be that we see please select a post, and I'll add some inline styling here to center this by simply setting text align to center. And now I want to check if this props ID, if this is true-ish. Initially, ID in the block container is null, and we're passing this to full post, and null is treated as false. So initially, this check here will return false, so we won't get inside the if block. If we do get inside, which we only do once the ID is something which is not treated as false, so something above 1 or equal to or higher than 1, and all the IDs we get from the server are equal to or higher than 1. Once this is the case, I want to output the post. So now we should have the following behavior, that if I save this, we now can click on one of these posts, and now we see it. And as you saw before I clicked it, we see please select a post. So that's working. Now in the next lecture, let's make sure that we also fetch the data for that given post once we selected it.